Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, so today we're diving into the psychology of why you constantly feel like everyone's watching you, and spoiler alert, decades of fascinating science proves they absolutely aren't. If you've ever felt the burning gaze of a room full of people just dissecting your every flaw, trust me, you are not alone. But today, we're going to fundamentally shift how you view yourself in public using some incredibly freeing psychological research. Picture this, right? You walk into a meeting, or maybe a classroom, and you're 5 minutes late. Every head turns, your hair is a bit of a mess, you've got this glaring coffee stain on your sleeve, and sweat is literally dripping down your forehead. In that split second, your brain tells you everyone saw absolutely everything, and they're all judging you. You feel like a bug under a microscope. Well, at least that's exactly what it feels like in your head. But let's look at what actually happened in that room, compared to your internal panic. The reality? Maybe two people actually glanced up. One was just looking at the door because they expected someone else, and the other looked right back down at their phone before you even sat down. Nobody noticed the coffee stain. Nobody saw the sweat. And honestly, nobody cared. That tiny fraction of people who did register your late entrance, they completely forgot about it before you even found your seat. Psychologists actually have an official name for this exhausting, constant feeling of being judged. It's called the spotlight effect. It's this psychological phenomenon where you tend to believe you're being noticed far, far more than you really are. And really getting a grip on this effect, that's the ultimate key to no longer living your life like the whole world is your audience. So let's look at part one, the Barry Manilow experiment. To prove just how powerful this illusion really is, psychologist Thomas Gilovich at Cornell University ran this absolutely brilliant study back in 2000. He had college students wear a highly embarrassing Barry Manilow t-shirt. I mean, the social equivalent of wearing a giant "Please Judge Me" sign. They walked into a room of their peers, sat down briefly, and then left. When asked how many people noticed the shirt, the wearers confidently guessed about 50%, half the room. But the actual data? It reveals a massive gap between perception and reality. Fewer than 25% of the room actually registered the shirt at all. Some people didn't even remember anyone walking into the room. The students literally thought they were twice as visible as they actually were. And Gilovich didn't stop there. He and his team ran variations to see if this only applied to embarrassing stuff. They tested it with flattering shirts, featuring Bob Marley or Martin Luther King Jr. The result? Exactly the same. They even tested group discussions. Whether students were stressing over an awkward pause, a terrible comment, or feeling super proud of their absolute best contribution to the discussion, the results were identical. People are just simply not as visible as they feel. So, the crucial question here is figuring out why our brains do this to us. Well, it comes down to a psychological concept called anchoring. Because you experience the world purely from your own perspective, you feel your own nervousness incredibly intensely. You see your own blemishes in the mirror. You hear your own voice crack. You're basically anchored to the vivid intensity of your own self-awareness, and you incorrectly assume that this intense feeling must be radiating outward for everyone else to see. But it's not. That feeling stays entirely with you. This whole idea that others are watching is truly just a reflection of your own inner world. This brilliantly illustrates the day-to-day reality of the spotlight effect. Think about the last time you were in an elevator with a complete stranger. Do you remember the color of their shoes or whether they looked tired? Probably not, right? You were thinking about your lunch or an email you totally forgot to send. Meanwhile, that stranger might have spent 10 minutes agonizing over their outfit, feeling super self-conscious. You didn't notice because you are the star of your own internal movie, and to you, they were just background scenery. We're all walking around trapped in this exact same illusion. Moving right along to part two, the tribal brain false alarm. We really have to ask, why does our brain torture us with this constant false alarm? Well, for tens of thousands of years in ancient history, humans lived in small tribes of maybe 50 to 150 people. In that world, your reputation was quite literally a survival tool. If you stood out as strange or weak, you could be pushed away from the fire, exiled, and even killed. So our brains evolved in that high-stakes environment to constantly sound the alarm that we're being watched. Back then, missing a social cue was literally a matter of life and death. But look where we are today. You live in a world of 8 billion people. You likely pass more strangers in a single week on your commute than your ancient ancestors met in their entire lifetime. But your brain? It hasn't caught up. It is still running that ancient software, thoroughly convinced that every single pair of eyes in the grocery store is a potential threat. It's a defense mechanism that's just completely outdated for the modern world. Which brings us to part three, the illusion of transparency.
As if the spotlight effect wasn't enough, Gilovich and his colleague Savitsky discovered another layer to this. They called it the illusion of transparency. This is the terrifying yet completely false belief that your internal, hidden emotions are written all over your face. It's that feeling during a job interview where you're convinced the interviewer can literally see the fear radiating off you. Or when you're sad at a party and you just assume everyone at the table knows exactly what's wrong. You basically assume your inner world is perfectly transparent to observers. To test this, researchers had people give public speeches while feeling incredibly nervous. When they asked these nervous speakers to rate their visible anxiety, the speakers thought it was glaringly obvious. They felt totally exposed. But when the audience members were asked to rate the speaker's nerves, they barely registered a thing. The audience literally just saw a normal person giving a speech. This research proves several incredibly comforting things. First, the anxiety pounding in your chest, invisible to everyone but you. Second, that embarrassment that makes your ears feel like they're literally burning, it doesn't actually show on your face the way you think it does. They even tested this by having people drink disgusting, bitter drinks while being watched. The tasters thought their disgust was so obvious, but observers couldn't even tell who was drinking the bad liquid. Your inner world is securely hidden behind a thick wall that others almost never see through. And here's the most practical, actionable takeaway from all this. In a truly liberating 2003 follow-up study, researchers found this powerful perspective-shifting method. They took speakers who were about to go on stage and simply told them about the illusion of transparency beforehand. They explained, hey, audiences cannot see your nervousness. The result? The speakers who knew about the illusion didn't just feel less anxious, they actually performed significantly better. Just knowing that your inner fear is invisible literally makes you better at the thing you're afraid of. How amazing is that? Let's look at part 4, social media and the spotlight. Now, you might be wondering about the digital elephant in the room. Does social media change this dynamic? Well, it's true that social media absolutely feeds the spotlight effect by making us feel constantly observed. It magnifies the pressure of follower counts and views. But the core research, it still holds true online. You might agonize over a photo caption for 20 minutes, absolutely terrified of how it's going to be perceived. Yet the reality is most of your followers will scroll past it in under 2 seconds. They aren't studying your post, they're worrying about what they are going to post next. The spotlight effect follows you online, for sure, but the audience is still just as distracted by themselves. Finally, part 5, freedom in being unnoticed. So what does this all mean for you? How do you take decades of robust psychological research and use it to manage your stress and completely change your daily routines? Well, it means you can finally reclaim the massive amounts of energy you've spent managing an audience that barely exists. Here are 3 actionable steps you can build right into your routine to manage daily stress. First, go eat at a restaurant alone. Seriously, no one is pitying you. Second, ask that question in the meeting that you think sounds stupid. The rest of the room is going to forget it in minutes. Third, wear the shirt you actually like instead of the safe one. Try the thing you might fail at. Because even if you make a simple mistake and feel that extreme rush of shame, make it a daily routine to remind yourself, the person who saw you trip in the hallway, they replace that memory with their own worries within minutes. Ultimately, the most empowering takeaway from this whole explainer is this exact quote. If the spotlight isn't real, then neither is the stage. And if there's no stage, there's no audience waiting for you to mess up. Which means today, right now, you can completely stop performing. You can step out of that spotlight your ancient brain invented and just live. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. So what will you do today now that you know nobody is watching?